So I am going to get started. Nice to be here again. So this is 2 of 3 talking about Christmas Eve, Christmas morning, Christmas Day. What can we see in the prophecy stories and doctrines about the Lord's birth into the world in the light of the spiritual significance of times of day? Just going to run through a couple of things I talked about last week. I showed you this picture. The Easter story would, of course, lend itself beautifully to a study like this because there's a lot of specificity. I mean, there's particular hours on when the Lord was on the cross that are talked about. So, but it's not Easter time; it's Christmas time. And this was an idea I had for a way to look at prophecy stories and doctrines about the Lord's birth into the world. So last week we looked at this promise that the Lord made to Noah after the flood: as long as the days of the earth, summer and winter, day and night, shall not cease. And we got to this idea that those last pairs, summer and winter, day and night, are about states of a regenerate person. First there's charity, but then there's not so much. But all of these variations happen so that we can be made happier. And then day and night will not cease. So times of day are particularly reflective of the state of the understanding, the state of the intellect. And so the alternations that happen there is kind of the topic we're talking about, times of day. Evening, Christmas Eve was the topic last week. And nighttime, I can't think of a passage that says really anything good about nighttime. Or at least what the nighttime state represents. But evening can be sort of, okay, the evening leads into night, so that's not good. But there are also positive things about the evening, such that, as this passage here says, evening is a state of heaven. It's not the best state of heaven, but evening is a state of heaven. This contention I was making last week, that I believe the Lord was born in the evening, based on the evidence of Zechariah's prophecy and how it is explained at Arcana 6000. Any distance to which I will push that contention is just sort of me fooling around, because I don't know what time of day the Lord was born. But other evidence suggests, and this passage seems to say, that evening maybe was when the Lord was born. Certainly at an evening state in history, Jennifer. And so we finished up last week with, so if we want the evening state of Christmas, Christmas Eve, to be this good heavenly evening, what are some of the things that we can think about, that we can maybe do, mindsets that we can have that will allow that evening state to be a heavenly one, that doesn't plunge us into the dark of night, but comes back to morning. So the watchfulness of the shepherds, being interested in the truth and living by it. The star in the east, the star that appeared to the wise men in the east, this old knowledge about the Lord that had been preserved for, on the timeline, at least 2,000 years. When they saw that star, they knew what it was. That was familiar stuff to them, even though it was so old. But then also it's important truth needs to be thought about, needs to be talked about. Truth needs to be an active part of our life. And I'm seeing that in the dreams that the 4 dreams that Joseph had, plus the dream that the wise men had to go home another way. Because dreams represent preaching, keeping the truth active, talked about. So today, Christmas morning, I like my illustrations here. The Scrooge Awakes on the left there is by an artist named Saul Eitinge. His father was Dutch. He might have been born in Holland too, but he was an American. This is from an early American edition of A Christmas Carol, but not the first edition. But this guy knew Dickens, and Dickens liked his work. Dickens liked his illustrations. So there's Scrooge waking up on Christmas morning after his transformation that night, and then good old Norman Rockwell with Bob Cratchit and Tiny Tim going to church on Christmas morning. So those are the illustrations I've chosen. Aren't they happy? So Christmas morning, topics we will get to. The basic idea is that morning represents the Lord's advent. So I was saying last week, I think maybe the Lord was born in the evening. Lots of things that are telling us, though, that morning represents the Lord's advent. So I'm sort of curious about what might be the difference between those two things. So maybe that's something we can think about. What do we mean by a day? So this will answer Jennifer's question from a minute ago. Just even sort of as I was talking last week, but hearing some feedback from some of you all also was making me realize that I need to clarify what I'm talking about when I use the term a day. A speculative timeline of Luke 2. So I'm speculating. I think maybe the Lord was born in the evening. We'll see where else things might fit on a timeline. There is morning imagery in the Christmas story. If you look for the word morning in Luke chapter 2 or Luke 1 or 2, Matthew 1 or 2, the word morning, you won't find it there. But of course, when John the Baptist is born and Zacharias' tongue is loosed and he praises the Lord and he says something about the Lord's coming will be like a day spring from on high, that sounds like the morning. And that also the idea of what Simeon said, the Lord will be a light, the coming of light. And that's what morning is. Morning is when the light comes. So the Lord will be the coming of light to lighten the Gentiles. Going sort of back to the speculative timeline idea, if I have an idea about something that might have happened on the first Christmas morning, and this is just me guessing, what might that have been, and what might we learn from what happened on the first Christmas morning, the first day that the Lord had been born in the world?